You have a Bible open to John chapter 4. John chapter 4. It's good to be back. I'm thankful for Pastors Matthew, Pastor Tom, for preaching while I was out. It's good to be back with you. I was really thirsty today, so I figured I'd bring this up here. I don't know. I want to make sure I stay hydrated. We have this phrase at my house. I have a lot of sayings at my house. I don't know if growing up, did your parents have phrases like you better, like if you're going to be dumb, you better be tough, right? Those are the kind of things that I want my kids to tell my grandkids that their dad used to always say, or even my grandkids. I want them to say things like, we have things like, life is hard, it's harder if you're stupid. I don't know, I have the dumb thing going, because it's for me, usually, is what it is. One of the things that I say all the time at my house is that you have to hydrate or die. Like, I want my kids to say, have you ever been to the hospital before? Like, you go to the hospital, you take someone to the hospital, and all they do, they go to the ER, and all they do is they give you a bag of fluid, and they send you home because you were just dehydrated. Like, everything that was wrong with you, you thought, oh, I'm having a heart attack, everything's going wrong, I'm going to die, I don't know what's wrong. And the problem was you didn't have enough water in your system. See, water's so important for us. It's vital. You can go 40 days without eating, but 3 days without water, and then you're going to die. So you have to hydrate or die, which is kind of, I know it's just easy to remember. I want my kids to remember it because you've done it too. Like, we've done it. We've gone on mission trips and taken really strong people to go do a job, and then they get out there and we're on the equator and they're working, and all of a sudden they're laying on the side of the trail because they didn't hydrate. But you got to hydrate. Hydration is something you need. So I want to make sure I do. One of the most important things I do on Sunday mornings now as I get older is to make sure I stay hydrated. Usually I'll have tea or something in this ugly cup. My kids gave it to me. I don't really like it, but it makes the water taste a little bitter. But it's not even about the vessel. I mean, it needs to be clean as much as it is the source that we're going to talk about this morning. It's the source, the water that you're getting to survive and to live and to thrive. That's what matters. And some people, the source is their accomplishment, right? I achieved this goal. I got this position. I earned this degree. I did whatever it was. Like, I just earned hopefully my last degree I'll earn. And it was a long process, right? It was like 2011 until 2019. So it was painful, and you guys had to put up with me whining all the way through it. And I remember times in there where I was thinking, if I just didn't have to write, like you try to go on vacation and couldn't enjoy it because I knew I should be writing this project. I should be working on something else. And then there were times where I felt like there's no way I can get it done. I compared my work to other people's work that I can't do this. I can't do it. But if it was just over with, everything would be okay. It would be so great. And so the day came. The day came in December, and now I tested negative this week, by the way, just for fun. I went and got tested tested negative because couple weeks ago we were, but I haven't been sick. I haven't had it, but so when I cough like that, that's another reason to hydrate. But when I went and tested, they asked for COVID. They asked me, do you have any symptoms? And and the symptoms are, if you read them, it's that your joints ache and you're exhausted. And I'm like, well, I think I've had COVID since my son was born 20 years ago, right? I've been exhausted and I've been aching forever. So I don't know. So you get it, but you need to stay hydrated. I coughed and threw myself off of what we were talking about. What was I talking about? We were talking about being hydrated, because ultimately we're talking about Jesus. This is where this goes. But as we consider where we're getting this water from, so you graduate, right? So you graduate, you go there for December, you walk, get to wear this thing. It was kind of all crazy, and it felt really good. They threw a big meal for us. You're hanging out with all these guys and all your friends. I mean, it was just a great experience for about a week. But then, you come back and it's the same stuff. Like, the degree's over, the school's done, and instead of everything being great and easy, COVID shows up, right? Then everything goes haywire, and now we're having to deal with all this stuff, and it's like, it didn't make anything easier. It's nice I don't have to do that, but I found out there were like 400 other things I needed to be doing too at the same time, so it's great, and nothing changed. And like, if that was a thing, and there were moments where in my heart I would look and think, if this was over, then this other stuff wouldn't be a problem, and the reality is, the other stuff's still there. And so I was looking at that. I mean, we all do it. We all think that if I could just have the promotion, then I'll be happy. And then you get the promotion and you realize, now I'm responsible for all these people and it's hard. Or we thought, if I could just get married, right? Or, then all my problems will go away. Remember that? Remember when you thought that? And there's either married, and then you got married. And then you realized you married a sinner just like you. And you thought, oh no, I remember. You think, that we get there. So then you thought, I know what we'll do. We'll have kids. That'll fix everything, right? That'll make everything okay if we just have kids, right? I just shouldn't laugh like that so much. My kids might be watching. But the idea is that we think we have kids and everything will be perfect. And it is, listen. Don't misunderstand. It is a joy to have a great marriage. It's a joy, but it's never perfect. And if you're looking to your kids to make you okay, that's not going to happen, right? You realize, oh man, it shows you how much more of a sinner you are. It teaches you how to sacrifice and give, but it shows you even more problems. They keep eating your food, breaking your stuff. And so then you thought, well, maybe the problem is my kids aren't playing sports, right? So we'll get them in there. That'll fix everything, right? No. And that made it harder, right? And then so then you get there, and some parents, they do that and think, well, if I could get my kid to be great at sports, then I'd be something. And so that's why they yell at the ref and drive their kid and do all this other crazy stuff. And, it's just like we have all these things, or it was money, or maybe even you got the marriage and then it ended. It ended in divorce. And then you feel like, well, I'm just rejected. And you have people in your family feel like they're always looking down on you. And it didn't work. And now you're just going, I don't know what to do, and I don't know. Or who knows? Maybe you just made a really bad choice, and you looked at something and said, if I could just have this thing, it would really satisfy me, even though you knew that it was not. Everybody around you told you that was a bad idea, and you went ahead and you did it anyway, and right now you're suffering the consequences of it. In those moments, and when we realize that those things don't satisfy, there's a key thing that we need to pay attention and ask ourselves a question this morning. Ask ourselves, where are we looking for water? Where are we looking? Who are we asking? Who are we asking to fulfill the deepest needs of our heart? Are you looking to your own effort or your own strength? If you get your body to look this way, if you could get your marriage to look this way, get your house to look this way? Are you looking to your education? Are you looking to your successes, to your career, to your abilities? Are you looking to another person and thinking if they would just you ever prayed this prayer, husbands? You ever pray, Lord, please just help her see that I'm right? You ever do that? I do that sometimes. I'll just pause. When I'm losing an argument, I'll pause and pray sometimes. I don't ask her. I don't pray that. I just say, Lord, let your will be done. It's more serious when I do it. But I find it helps to do that, to seek the Lord. But so many times we feel like, God, if you would just fix everybody else, then I would be okay, right? I know I've got it okay. But then sometimes you get worse and you're like, Lord, I'm such a mess. I can't fix myself. I don't know what to do. And you're on the right track there. But if you just stay there, you're not okay either. So where do we go? What's great about it is the text, as we're walking through John. John is written by one of Jesus' best friends. It's a gospel account. It's an account that really the other three gospel writers, there's a lot of stuff in John that we don't see from them. In these first 5 chapters, we don't see it in the other gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And John has started off showing us that Jesus is God in John 1, that he didn't start with the birth story of Jesus. He started before that. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So Jesus has always existed. He's creator. He's the creator. He's the designer. He is the one. He is the one that decided where our planet would be in space and how many other stars there would be there. He's the one that decided what body type you would have. He's the one that decided the amount of melanin in your skin, the color of your eyes, the thickness of your hair, the place and time in history where you would have been born and where you were born to their parents. This is who Jesus is. And the reason I'm kind of going into all this is I want us to remember always when we come to this text, because the story we're looking at in John 4, we're going to take at least 3 weeks on it, because there's so much there. But I want us to make sure we get the main point. The reason that John wrote it is found in John 20:31. He said, I've written all these things so that you can believe that Jesus is the Messiah and that in believing in him you would have life in his name. So every time we read through John, we're not just looking, we're going to see what true worship is next week. We're going to see kind of Jesus' approach to the mission of God, and we want to emulate that because he's actually going after it and interacting with a woman that wasn't really interested in spiritual things at the moment in what we'll read today. But that's not really the reason. That the main thing that John wanted us to see here was who this Jesus is. And he is someone that can quench the thirst of a woman who has likely been divorced multiple times, who is living in an immoral relationship, who has been rejected by society, and a woman that feels it crosses racial barriers of his culture in that day. He's speaking to a Samaritan, which again, it's amazing when we see this. I want you to look at this. So we have John chapter 4. Let's look at this together. I'll bring this table over here to set my Bible on it. But John chapter 4 it's such a key text. We may end up spending more than 3 weeks on it. But But I really want to see this, because if you've ever been in a place where you realize, that thing that I thought was going to satisfy me, it did for a moment, but it's just not okay. There's just something in us going, and there is something in us. There's this, it's a little bit different. There's this thing called holy discontent that I think we all have. Where we look at the world, we go, this isn't right. We want to make things right. We want to do something about it. That's why we want to equip people to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. That's why we want to, Parker and I were both sad because like our mission trips got canceled this summer, and why we have some 100-something water filters back there that we're still waiting to take to Panama to help these people get pure water so that we can share living water with them. And it's why we work to make things right in this world. But at the end of the day, there's something when we lay our heads down and go, here's why I know I'm okay. Here's why I can rest. And some of us aren't sleeping because what we think we need to rest isn't happening, because the kids aren't the way we want it to be, the world doesn't look the way we want it to look, our bank account doesn't look the way we want it to look, the doctor didn't tell us what we wanted to hear, and we need a source that's greater than all of these things to really make us okay. So I want us this morning, I want us to consider, I want you to think about who you're asking to satisfy your deepest need, and I want us to ask the right person. So let's just look at the story. Let's look at the story. John chapter 4. When I say story, I don't mean it's made up. This is actual historical events that happened here. This is not something someone came up with later. The Apostle John, one of Jesus' best friend, recorded this and wrote this. The Holy Spirit inspired him to write this for us. And he says, now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee. So he starts off explaining that, remember, a couple of weeks ago, and even before that, but we talked about John the Baptist, and Pastor Matthew showed us how John the Baptist said, I'm here to point people to Jesus. He has to increase, I have to decrease. But John the Baptist was a pretty popular preacher, and people were coming out from all over, and they were being baptized to acknowledge that we're sinners. The baptism did not save them. It's interesting that Jesus, it says here in verse 2, that Jesus didn't baptize himself. In fact, he wasn't doing it. So like if that's really what you have to do to be a Christian, is to be baptized, Jesus isn't baptizing anybody. You got to figure that out somehow. And so, but what we see in the Bible is that baptism is something you do after you're saved. It's not something that makes you a Christian. You don't add that on to it. And so, but Jesus is here, and he's not baptizing, but the Pharisees are getting word of this, and so there's this buzz about what Jesus is doing, and it's not time for the great confrontation. He's already confronted these guys. He's already confronted them once. He's already kind of gotten turned over the tables in the temple, and explained that he is the temple of God, that the temple is his Father's house, but he's not running from the confrontation, but he knows it's not time yet, so he leaves Judea and goes to Galilee, which is if you look at your Bible map, it's about a 70-mile trip. And what's interesting is verse 4, there's a lot of interesting, but one thing that's interesting is in verse 4, it says that he had to pass through Samaria. And the had to, in the original language, is not like he had to like it was forced on him. But the idea is, we're going to go through John, and we'll come back to this when we get further into it, but the idea is that Jesus is actually on a mission from the Father. He's on mission, and so part of that mission is he has to go through Samaria. Now other Jews, some other Jews that were more bigoted, more prejudiced, more whatever you want to call it, than Jesus, they wouldn't even go through Samaria, because where Samaria was, it was in between Galilee and where Jesus, and where he was baptizing, and so it's in between this place, and so it's about 40 miles down. But this area, it was an area of Israel in the northern kingdom, where in 722 BC, the Assyrians came in and they took out like all of the kind of powerful, noble people out and tried to re-educate them, put them in a different land, and left kind of the common, regular, everyday people. And some of the people that were left then they brought in people, the Assyrians did, brought in people from other nations that worshipped other gods like Baal, Molech, all these other people. They brought in all these other religions, and they kind of intertwined them there. And so in Samaria, where they're all kind of mixing and mingling, now the Samaritans are looked down upon when they come back, when the Jews get out of captivity, they come back to rebuild the temple. If you read the Old Testament books of Ezra and Nehemiah, you'll see Samaritans actually tried, and we'll talk about this more next week, that the Samaritans, they tried to help rebuild the temple, and the people rebuilding the temple said, no, we don't want your help. You can't do this. And what happens eventually is they end up going and building their own temple on Mount Gerizim. They end up embracing the first 5 books of the Old Testament and rejecting the rest of it. But there's this big division there. And it really is. There's really a lot of prejudice there, which is kind of dumb. Prejudice is kind of dumb, isn't it? Because you really had nothing to do with where you were born or who your parents are or any of that. So it's kind of Jesus is greater than all of this. And so he goes through intentionally. And even when he goes through, he sends his disciples into the Samaritan town to buy food. So like these are people, they wouldn't even do that. But let's look at it from the text. You'll see it. He had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. And Jacob's well was there. And we'll just pause with the whole well theme for here a minute. At this well in this area is where Abraham sent his servants, and he found Rebekah, a wife for Isaac. Later, Jacob goes to the same area, and he finds and meets Rachel. And even the whole idea of a well in the Old Testament, even Moses, which is interesting, even talking about kind of the racial differences here, Moses met his wife, who was a Midianite, not Jewish, at a well. Her name was Zipporah. And so, like, these wells are the places, like, if you're single, like, it sounds like me reading the Bible, like Old Testament, you want to go hang out at the well, right? Because this is it. Especially Jacob's well. It looks like a pretty good deal. And so they're going there. So that's where he goes to this well, and he sits down, which is interesting considering who he's going to talk to is the reason I kind of brought that kind of trivia in. But he goes there, and because the well was where everybody had to go to get water. It was the meeting place. It was the place where everyone had to go. Usually, though, in this culture, the women would go get the water. The men were out doing other things and working or whatever. And so the women would come to get the water. They would usually come in the early morning or late night. We'll come back to that. Let's go back to the text. Look at verse 6. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, this is what's great. Remember, the reason John's writing is so we can see who Jesus is? Jesus is wearied. He's tired. He's exhausted. He's just walked 40 hard miles. And he sits down, and not only has he walked 40 hard miles with his disciples, but then he's going to send his disciples down. I'm tired, guys. I'm going to rest. You guys go get food, which was the job. The rabbi wasn't supposed to have to go do all this stuff, so he sits down and sends his disciples, but he is wearied. He's wearied, and he sat down. He was sitting beside the well, and it was about the 6th hour. Now, the 6th hour is really about noontime. I'm going to get a pen. I'm going to try something different here. I haven't done this before, but not that different for you guys. I don't even know why I'm saying anything about it, but I kept looking at this time. I didn't print off all the text in my notes this time. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I didn't print off, and so I'm just reading it out of the Bible. And the first 2 services, I kept getting lost when I would come back to this. Not that I didn't do that before. See, I'm already lost, and I tried to do this so it'd be subtle, and here I've just drawn attention to it. Life is hard. It's harder if you're me. If you're dumb like me, let's hear. So he's there at the 6th hour. That's not going to help. I don't want to do that. So anyway, so he's there at the 6th hour. It's the heat of the day is the idea. Like yesterday, I tried to go clean out my garage at 11 o'clock and came back inside. I said, that's it. It'll wait. It doesn't need to be cleaned that bad. It's just hot right now, isn't it? And that's the idea here. This is the time of day. And if you're going to go get water, like if you're going to carry a jug of water for who knows how many miles, you're going to go do this. Like when we go to Panama, like in the dry season, the reason we're trying to dig a well and give them water is in the dry season, they have little wells around or little streams, but they'll dry up. And so one of the first times we went, you have to walk a half a mile or more to get to the river to get water and carry it back. If you're going to do that, you don't want to do that in the heat of the day. Right? You want to do that in the morning or in the evening. But this is the heat of the day, and Jesus shows up there, and he sits down, and verse 7, a woman from Samaria came to draw water. Now, she's got 2 strikes against her right there for like kind of Orthodox, kind of strong Jews at this time, religious leaders that had added stuff in and were kind of biased. And they would say she's a woman. Now in their culture and they'd added in that they wouldn't even speak to a stranger woman. But if you were like a really serious Orthodox kind of Jew in this time, a Pharisee, you weren't supposed to speak to your own family if they were a woman when you were out in public. Like you weren't even going to talk to each other there. So there's kind of one strike. Now, if you were a woman and you had an annoying husband, you're probably like, hey, let's go to the mall, right? So I don't have to hear this anymore. It would be a good reason to get away from it. But so she's there. That's a strike against her. And then she's a Samaritan talking to a Jew, and they both kind of look down on each other. There was this real big division there. So she's got 2 strikes against her. She's going to have 3, we'll see in a minute. But so all these things. But then if you think about it, why would she be coming to get water at noon? Well, I mean, maybe she just ran out and didn't plan well. But it looks like there's more to the story than this, is what it looks like. We can't be certain about it, but it sure looks like she's going. But the idea is she's going to get something she needs. She's going to get some water, and she needs that to live. But she's doing it at a really odd time, at a time when she wouldn't see other people, right? There's some of you, or maybe not you, you're here, some of you may be watching online, like this whole, like, let's stay home and isolate. It's been like heaven because you're an introvert, and you're like, dude, this is awesome. I don't need an excuse not to go see people. But if you're like me, it's like, I can't, what in the world? No, give me people. I need people. I need to be around people. I need to be around people. And like, I don't want to intentionally avoid, I guess there are times I want to avoid people, but for the most part, like, I don't want to go I want to go when I can see somebody, talk to them. I want to have an interaction. But she's clearly avoiding interaction here. But she came to draw water at this time of day, and Jesus said to her, give me a drink, which was shocking. Now, we read that, and it doesn't sound like a big deal. Give me a drink. He's there. He's walked. He doesn't have a cup. He doesn't have a bucket. You came to draw water. Could you give me some water too? 4 his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, how is it that you, a Jew, oh my goodness, it's 12 o'clock. Well, good news is this service goes to 12:15, so we're fine. This is like when I picked up the pen again, isn't it? I got to quit talking about what I'm thinking in my head and just stick to the text. Let's go back to the Bible. She said, how is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? So she's surprised by it because John adds in this idea that for Jews who have no dealings with Samaritans, they wouldn't use the same dishes, is what that word means. They don't use the same vessels. Like there's this weird kind of thing. Like they're going, no, we're not going to. No, not only is he asking for a drink, but he doesn't have a cup, so I want to drink out of your cup. Like this whole thing's kind of made me a germaphobe. Like I'm not sharing my cup with John or my own kids like right now, right? You don't want to do that. But that's what he's asking her to do. Will you give me a drink? And she's shocked by this. Why are you interacting with me, someone that culturally you're not supposed to, that everyone else that looks like you has judged people that look like me? Why are you interacting with me? And so she's surprised by this. But Jesus answered her, and he said, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. So what he's saying to her is, you need to ask. You need to ask me for what you really need, for your deepest need. You ask me for living water. And she kind of takes it a little bit literally and maybe responds even a little sarcastically, it looks like here. The woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? It's a great question. I've underlined that from verse 12 in the Bible. Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock. So even today, this well is in existence. So for thousands of years, this well has been providing life-giving water to people in that area. And she's saying, are you greater than Jacob? And that's really a great question for you to ask, whatever it is. And so that's the question we ask Jesus whenever he challenges us, whenever he calls us, whenever you became a believer, maybe before, if you haven't really trusted Jesus yet, it's because you're kind of looking at it and going, are you really greater than, you're not saying Jacob, but are you really greater than this relationship that I don't want to give up, that I know I'll have to give up if I really follow you? Are you really greater than the revenge that I want to get on this person? Are you really greater than my sin? Are you greater than whatever? I'm looking to this to satisfy me. Hers was her religion and her backgrounds, because even though there was that kind of split there in 722, she's still looking back like a lot of these Jews were. They were looking back and saying, well, our father's Abraham, right? I have the right genealogy. We've been given the law. I know all the right stuff. I do the right things. And so are you greater than my effort? Are you greater than my religion? Why would I look to you to satisfy my deepest need when I know what I really need is another kid? When I know what I really need is just more money? Because the last time I got money, it felt really good. The last time I bought the stuff, right? The last time I you know, that's why the credit card bill is so high, because I keep thinking if I just had one more thing, then I wouldn't feel this emptiness inside. If I could just get this situation to change, then I would be okay. Are you greater than that? Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. Everyone who drinks of this water, talking about the water from the well, is going to be thirsty again. He says, you're going to be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. And that's the idea, isn't it? Isn't that the idea? That's what we do. We'll say, okay, here's what I need. I need, for me, right now, okay, so like for Father's Day, I got a little fish surfboard that I haven't even ridden yet. It's kind of sad, but I thought, man, if I get that right, then I'll be happy. And I get it. I actually snuck out there and I took it out one day. And I didn't put any wax on it because it was a soft top one, and then you need to wax it. I didn't know you do that, but I remember walking out on the beach thinking, this is so great. It's little bitty waves, perfect little fish. It's the first day for it. Oh, this is good. It's going to satisfy. And it didn't. And I drank, and it was fun for a moment, but it didn't satisfy, right? Oh, well, let's try this. Let's go get married. All right, now we're married. We got a great wife, got a great husband, whatever it is, and man, life is good. This is it. We're satisfied. We're good. But then after a while, start to get thirsty again. Now, not thirsty in the Urban Dictionary kind of thirsty way, although that's kind of interesting that that's where he's going with this, but like yearning for something. You know what, I am married, but now I realize I'm married to a sinner. It's not quite there. Or you got married, and then all of a sudden that satisfied my thirst, but then the whole thing fell apart, and we got divorced. Now what do? Who am I? What is my identity really? What makes me okay? And we can keep going back and trying to find temporary things, more money. We keep trying to find more education. We keep trying to find all these things, and we go to this well, and we keep coming back, and we go, and that feels better for a little while. But in 1,000 years, who you were married to, what your background was, how much money you made, how many mission trips you went on, that's not what makes you okay with God. Now, I want you to invest in the kingdom, go on a bunch of mission trips and help a bunch of people. You'll have rewards in heaven, but that's not going to get you to heaven. He's saying you got to look to Jesus to satisfy. Who are you asking to satisfy your deepest need? Are you looking to something outside of God to do that? Pay attention to the source of what you're looking to for satisfaction. In fact, what Jesus does, he tells her this. He says, the water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water. We'll talk about this on the third week. Springing up to eternal life. You're going to share this with other people too. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water. I want it. I'm in. At that point, we're going, yeah, sign the card. We'll mark her down. She's a convert. Let's pray the prayer. You're good. But Jesus doesn't do that. He shows her needs. He says, yeah, I recognize I have a need. I want to meet that need. He goes, all right, let's deal with your deepest wound. Why? Why would he do that? Why can't God just come on and say, look, Mike, I love you, and I'm going to forgive you. I want to be your father. I want you to have a relationship with me, so just come on in. No, he says, no, look, you've got to recognize how broken you are. And I'm going to peel the Band-Aid off and show you either your woundedness or your sinfulness. Because really, we don't know. It doesn't tell us what's really going on with the woman here. We guess some things. Jesus said to her, go call your husband and come here. And the woman answered him, I have no husband. She's got to be thinking, why has he got to say that? I mean, that's what we think, because she's here in the middle of the day, obviously to avoid people, and we're going to see in a moment, she's been married 5 times. She's living with a guy that she's not married to, which is sin, and it's wrong and controversial. And so she's there, and he has to bring this up, and she's like, oh, man, why? She goes, I have no husband. Jesus said, you are right in saying I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true. Now, we don't know why she's had 5 husbands. It doesn't tell us. It's likely that she was divorced several times. She could have been a victim of the whole kind of system set up and just being used and thrown away, which is still tragic and painful. She could have been unfaithful and lawfully divorced because she was committing adultery. These 5 guys, she could have married 5 times, and all 5 of the guys could have been they all could have died, right? So, which would kind of make sense, because now he said, the one you now have is not your husband. So guy number 6 says, okay, the first 5 died. We're not getting married. I'm not jumping on that. I'm not into that. So maybe that was it. But whatever it is, she's in a controversial situation. It's a lot of pain. A lot of people now, one, you were a Samaritan woman. You're a Samaritan, you're a woman, and you have been rejected. So everything in that culture would say, this is not someone that you want your kids hanging out with. This is not what you want your kids to grow up to be. This is not, nobody sits back and goes, one day I dream, I hope my 5th wedding will be the best one, right? You know, I really want to get married. I'm a little kid, man. Maybe that 6th one, that'll be the best one, right? Nobody says that. So here's a woman, and it wasn't that, maybe that wasn't it for you, or if it has been that for you, I want you to know what's great about this text is this is who Jesus is offering the gospel to. This is the first person he reveals himself to as Savior. In fact, we have to get to it because I'm running out of time. I'm sorry, let's look at this. This is so cool. Or show me what to do. No, let's slow down for a minute. I'll get there. I want you to hear this. This is kind of cool. Not kind of cool. Because here's the thing. What we see in her and what we want to do is the reason we want to go here first is because we want to see that what we need is Jesus. Like in this story, we're not Jesus. Even though the last week we're going to talk about how we do missions like Jesus does missions, I'm the woman at the well. I'm the one that has looked to so many other places to satisfy me. I need someone to save me. I need to ask him to give me living water. That's what I want you to do. And there's something in us when we have this craving that shows us that we were created for a relationship with God. Like the reason you keep going from girl to girl, from guy to guy, looking for more money or whatever the thing is and thinking, I just need the life or the world to look like this and then I'll be okay, is because there's a deeper need there. There's a deeper thirst. There's a deeper need that you have to be satisfied, and it's ultimately only satisfied in Christ. I'm looking at like 3 quotes like from Blaise Pascal, Augustine, and C.S. Lewis. I don't even know if I want to go there. I don't have time for that. Which one do you want? You want Pascal, Lewis, or Augustine? Just pick one. Somebody pick one. Augustine, that's my favorite one. I love that. That's my favorite one. That's the big one. So Augustine, who is like our town's named after, but we pronounce his name Augustine because we're cool like that. But he said, this is like one of my favorite quotes, and he said, actually this would be saved for the end of the sermon, but I want to give it to you now because we need to be near the end. Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. So like there's always going to be this, okay, this marriage wasn't it, maybe the next one will do it, or maybe the next one, or the second. Like you weren't supposed to be completely, fully, 100% satisfied in having that kid. Like that's not going to make you, they're going to move out, right? They're not going to call you on Mother's Day one year or Father's Day, or they're going to break your surfboard, right? Whatever the thing is. Like you're not created to be satisfied with just water or juice or steak or even Bluebell ice cream, as awesome as that is. Like your body and your life was designed, you were designed to be satisfied in God and in him alone. That's the idea. That's the idea behind that idea. There's a God-shaped vacuum in us. And so what we do is we go through life trying to satisfy it with all these other things. That idea came from Pascal, who kind of said that, here's what he said. He said, what else is this craving, this helplessness proclaimed, but that there was once in man a true happiness, of which all that now remains is the empty print and trace. He said, this he tries in vain to fill with everything around him, seeking in things that are not there to help. He cannot find in those things that are. That's a weird sentence, but though none can help, since this infinite abyss that can be filled only with an infinite and immutable object, in other words, by God himself. So like all this stuff that we're thinking, if I could just get this to be okay, what you really need is a relationship with Jesus. You need to ask him to fill you. Then you have the strength to love that gift of God that is your wife or your husband, and you can forgive when they have a bad day, and you're going to be okay if the kids don't turn out okay, and you'll be all right if your world doesn't look exactly right now. But you've got to ask Jesus. You've got to consider where you're looking to, who you're asking for to satisfy your deepest need, and that needs to be Jesus. She changes the subject, and we'll look at it next week in verse 19, once he kind of brings out all this pain and sin. And here's the cool thing is he knows what she's trying to hide, and he still loves her. And that's true of you too. He knows your deepest wound, your deepest pain, the thing that you think if everybody knew this about me, no one would want to be around me. Jesus already knows that, and he still loves you, and he's not waiting on you to fix it before he'll offer you everlasting life and living water. And he says, I just love you. And if you'll trust me, I'll give you springs of living water. In fact, we'll look at this more next week, the next part of the worship conversation they have, which is really cool. He's seeking worshipers. It goes along with what Parker shared with us earlier, that missions exist because worship doesn't. Because that's really where you're going to find your ultimate satisfaction is in worshiping God. But if you fast forward down to verse 26, look at verse 25. To have this conversation, the woman told him, he said, I know Messiah is coming, who is called the Christ, and when he comes, he will tell us all things. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. He reveals himself. This is the first of 7 great I am statements in the Gospel of John, and the first person he gives it to is not Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. It's not John the Baptist, the greatest man that ever lived. It's not his own disciples. It's this woman who's been married 5 times, is living with a guy that's not her husband, that everybody else has rejected, that's coming to town because she's ashamed, coming into the well at noon. And what that shows us is that no matter where you are or where you've been, one, there's hope for you. And Jesus loves you and he cares for you. And even if other religious people have rejected you, I want you to know there's still hope. God has not given up on you. And he's not looking for you to be perfect for him to love you and offer you life. So would you ask him today? That's what I want you to do. So I've got to wrap it up. I've gone way too long. There was so much. It's been 2 weeks, so I had more than I could get in. It's been pent up. And then two, it's kind of dumb if you're a religious person and you're looking at someone else and saying, oh, they're too far gone. I can't, and you're going to judge them or they're too different. It's just dumb. We need to offer this life to everyone and know this is the answer. What we need is Jesus. Who are you looking to? Who are you asking to satisfy your deepest needs? You need to ask Jesus.